So we're turning to the weekend Six Nations. Our Six Nations coverage is with Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. We are streaming this chat on Facebook and Periscope and Twitter. You can check our social channels if you want to tune in. Eddie O'Sullivan and Stephen Ferris standing by, and clearly we're going to start in Paris. Sometimes with analysis there are hundreds of moments which add up to a confusing picture. Other times, like on Saturday, it is crystal clear what decided the game. And Saturday boiled down to a touch of genius performed under the most ridiculous pressure.
Sexton push Ireland back into a 9-point advantage. Pull that slightly, more than slightly. It's a bad miss from one of the best kickers in the world. Dupont, Teddy Thomas, space in front of Thomas. He could go through the middle here. Teddy Thomas for the line, and over he goes. Try for France, and the lead is won. Lost now. Last ounces of reserve are being eked out now. They're leaving nothing behind them, this Ireland team, in a bid to force the opening, but neither are the French.
On est à la 83e face à l'Irlande. Anderson.
The point at which a drop goal becomes possible.
Attention le drop, il arrive.
Sexton from outside the 10-metre line.
Sexton waits, here it comes.
It's spinning, it's spinning.
It looks good.
Le drop de Jonathan Sexton.
Right below his arm, goes out.
Jonathan Sexton has made it.
Il est là. Jonathan Sexton à la dernière seconde crucifie l'équipe de France.
Ireland have stolen the game.
He has snatched victory from the jaws of defeat for Ireland. The full-time whistle is gone, and Ireland defeated the French by 2 points.
C'est terrible, terrible.
What a strike from distance, just creeps over. Incredible.
Amazing. Stephen Ferris, where were you? What was your reaction?
Just listening to that gives me goosebumps. Incredible. Well, what a day. I was actually in Dublin in a bar when we were all sitting feeling sorry for ourselves, hands in our head in our hands, and just thinking that the game was over, and just the amount of phases, the crossfield kick regathered by Keith Earls, and just Ian Henderson, a little bit of go forward, and as soon as they got that go forward, Sexton, as Conor Murray said, raised the eyebrows, give me the ball, and bang, absolutely slotted it over. So you can imagine the bar in the Dublin went pretty wild.
Because Sexton does not want to have to kick that crossfield kick to Earls. That's risky stuff, but he was going nowhere, and something he was seeing or feeling told him this just has to be done.
Yeah, no, it had to be done. I think I watched it back a few times. Keith Earls was keeping his width. That's very, very important. You know, the tighter you get, the easier it is for the defence. And Keith recognised an opportunity. But again, that kick had to be executed to perfection, and it was. And Keith Earls came on to it. He didn't kind of go out and try and receive it closer to the touchline. He came in from the touchline and just give us that little bit of momentum, that little bit of go forward that they needed at that time. Because if that hadn't went to hand, and do you know what? The handling in those conditions, the rain coming down, away from home, it just everybody to a man stuck their hand up, and you know, just the icing on the cake with Johnny putting that 42 3-yard over the bar.
Eddie, we do plenty of rigorous analysis on this show, and we'll do some over the next 20 minutes or so, but your emotional reaction to the thing, because it was just 4 or 5 minutes of unbelievable sport.
Yeah, I think when France got the penalty at the scrum, and you're thinking this is it. I mean, he's going to knock this through. Although I was surprised that it didn't go to Mashino to take, because he's a very experienced kicker. But once he missed that, he's just got, maybe there's a chance here. You just get a sense that maybe there's a chance. And then once we won the restart, and we started piling on the phases, you're thinking this is on. It's definitely on. And you know, I think that cross kick was inspirational, because I think what Sexton was aware of, which shows incredible, I suppose, experience and a sense or a feel for the game, which, like, it's like your quarterback knowing what's the most important thing at this moment. The cross kick to Earls, we had just batted our way up. Like, there's almost 20 something, pushing on 30 phases.
Yeah, 28.
And we're still in our own half. And, you know, he knows he needs another 10 or 15 metres to get within range. And, like, it's just going to take so much out of them, you know, to make that extra yardage. So he goes for the cross kick, which is, that's bravery beyond belief, because if Earls drops that, or it's not exactly on the money, and in fairness, Earls gathers it and ducks under and gets another precious few yards, and we get our kind of mojo back. You know, when that happened, when Earls got that little seam and he went through and we got it across the half line, I'm thinking it's on here. The only thing surprised me was he called for it where he did. Like, I mean, it was a long way out and the conditions were not good, but again, I think he sensed that, like, one mistake here and it's over. The guys are going to be tired. 40 phases. You know, at some point here, statistically, someone's going to drop the ball or get turned over. And he just said, look, I'm going to back myself. And I thought, it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary moment in Irish sport. I mean, and like, no one is going to forget where they were when it happened. I had the best seat now, so I was sitting on my recliner in my living room, which I elevated from at the time quite substantially. But, like, yeah, it was just breathtaking stuff. And I think the team, like, Sexton, it comes down to Sexton, but the team to, like, they refused to lose the game. It was kind of just refusing, we're not going to lose this game. That's it, we're not going to lose it, and we're going after it. It was kind of like an All Black thing, you know, like the All Blacks do. You think you have them beaten, they just... And I think Joe Schmidt referred to it, and he's dead right, that a victory like that does give you incredible amount of fuel in the furnace for the next time something like that happens, or you're in a bad place. You go, like, well, we were here before and we got out of it. So you can't
that will imbue
those, you know?
Yeah, it almost imbues everyone when you're in that situation again. If you take the All Blacks example, imbues them almost with an extra sense of calm, that not only do we think we can do this, but we've actually done it before. So you would figure when they're in that situation again, there'll even be a touch more calmness in an ideal world.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just that's the kind of experience that you can't buy. It's those moments in time where you put that in the bank, in the memory bank, and you know, like, the next time we're under the cosh, we've done this before. It's exactly right. We can do it again. We can get out of this. You don't want to put yourself there, but inevitably, sport to sport, you end up there, you know, at some point again. And maybe it's 2 years' time in the World Cup. You know, who knows? And like, and if, as I said, like, the All Blacks do it all the time, so they almost expect to do it, and that's what probably gives them that edge. So for us to put one like that in the bank, and we did it in 2009, Raj did it, you know, for the Grand Slam, you know, and he did it from Munster. Like, we've done it before, but the more often you do it, the more you start believing that it's almost inevitable when you have to, you know.
There were a few things. I mean, there's so much going on, not least the work rate, which Eddie references. So I saw that Peter O'Mahony, Stephen, he had 17 involvements in 41 phases. CJ Stander, who actually carried the ball on the last carry into contact before the drop goal, his line on what it's all like across those 5-6 minutes is, he said, even after the 7th or 8th phase, you just switch off and go into a deep, dark place. So some kind of deep, dark place where there's an element of autopilot. You played in that position. The back row in particular have to do a lot of big carries, have to put in a lot of work. Can you give us an insight? Have you been part of a drive like that? How draining is it? What is it like? Can you relate to the switching off thing he talks about?
Yeah, I think more. It's happened more in defence.
Right.
It happened more in defence for me over the years, where you were defending for your life for that last 5 or 6 minutes, and you just didn't know how you got yourself back up off the ground. And when you're in attack, I suppose it's exactly the same thing. You're just looking to hear the important voices around us. You're just looking to hear John. You're just looking to hear Connor saying, "Get round the corner. I need you here. I need you there." And, like, you know, 10, 15 phases can be quite hard work, especially at the 80 minutes of a very physical encounter. So those boys just would have been getting up and saying, "Let's go again. Let's go again. Let's go again," and that's what they've done. And like, I think CJ Stander finished off with 23 carries or something like that. You know, it's just huge workload, and I think he was slightly disappointed in the first half, but he certainly made up for it in the second. And I think you know, Ian Henderson in the second row had a huge game as well. James Ryan had a massive game as well with the amount of carries that he made when he was on the pitch. So I think they just roll their sleeves up. Joan just says, "Let's keep going." You just never know what happens, and you've got a man like Johnny Sexton steering the ship. That's what happens. That's the end result.
So it does get to a point where you're just too wrecked to think for yourself, really, and you're listening for Murray to tell you what to do. So, I mean, will he just tell you up, go? Will he tell you right, left? Will he give you that kind of instruction, or just feed the ball to you and tell you what he wants? Like, how does that communication work?
I think the communication will be the whole way throughout the team. And I remember, you're lying on the ground and Paul's saying, "Get up off the floor, Stevie. Get to the next phase. Get yourself into position." And I think to a man, they all would have been talking to each other, all saying, "Let's give it another effort here. Come on. No logs, no lying on the ground. Let's get back on the feet, make something happen." But in fairness to the French, it was a brick wall for the majority of those 40 phases that they were running into. The crossfield kick was, I agree with Eddie, was just a bit of magic that kind of got them their mojo back, as Eddie said. But it's just about having that belief. And I think the scenes at the end, Joe, the way they kind of ran for Johnny, all piled on him, I think it was more relief. That they'd gotten that victory. They were in so much control of the game. And then to let it slip with that, Thomas try there, I just think, it would have been a real sucker punch if they had lost that game, but they didn't. And they got themselves out of deal with a fantastic crossfield kick.
Yeah. Eddie, so let's analyse the performance up until the 78th, 79th minute. This should have been an armchair ride. The closing 10 minutes from an Irish point of view was an opinion I heard from quite a few people, and they contrived to put themselves in this position. So the Sexton drive and drop goal aside, how good an Irish performance was this? That's for you, Eddie. Yeah, I am, Eddie. Yeah,
I thought it was pretty average, to be fair. And that sounds ridiculous when you win a game like that. But if you take those last 5 minutes out of the game, like Ian Henderson won the ball at 77.5 minutes, and we went over the red. So for the first 77.5 minutes, and I know to say, France is very difficult to play, it's a hard place to go. That's all true, but the facts don't belie it. The facts belie that, and that's that we did dominate the game. We had almost 70% possession and 70% territory, and we didn't really look like scoring a try. We had a few really good field positions, and we got done at the ruck. We had a lot of ruck turnovers, crucial ones, in fact. We had, I think, six ruck turnovers, which is a lot in the game. And then as the second half wore on, we had a kind of a flurry of handling errors. There was loose passes, knock-ons, forward pass from different players, like maybe a bit of fatigue, and the ball was a bit wetter. But it wasn't a comprehensive performance. And you feel, had we had a comprehensive performance, we'd never been in that position where, France are always likely to pick up some loose like that and run it in. But it wouldn't have mattered because we had just kind of pushed ourselves on so much. And I think that was disappointing for that reason, that we didn't score a try. We didn't really look like scoring a try. Neither did they, by the way, apart from Teddy Thomas' line break. But it wasn't our best performance by any stretch. Now you say, win playing badly is great, but
no. I think it's legitimate, because everybody can separate those final 3 minutes with what was a fairly turgid game, and it was difficult to know to what extent the conditions dictated that, or equally, surely the conditions weren't so bad that we shouldn't have looked a bit more threatening at times, and like
if you looked at our tactics, I thought the first line out off the top, around the corner, lovely starter play that was right in behind him, 3 points. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
But as the game went on, we became narrower again, more one-off runners. Box kicking, was our exit strategy. And when we moved, it was Johnny around the back again, And the French, we don't get much credit at times for doing preparation analysis, but they actually had Johnny figured out, and they cut him off a few times, sent him back in, or they just wedged out and made the tackles. And
so are we readable? Sorry to interrupt, but that's a very interesting point, that they maybe had worked Johnny out, and given the lack of time Brunel has had with the players, that suggests maybe that we are a team that other teams will be well able to work out in attack. Do we have enough strings to our bow?
Well, based on last Saturday, no, we need to expand it a bit. They still had to make nearly 240 tackles. But the point is that they were able to make them. There was no mystery for them. We didn't have any line breaks. And when the other team makes 240 tackles, you have to accept the fact that you are running into contact a lot. And it's a contact sport, but there doesn't have to be 240 tackles in a game from the opposition. You should be able to pick them apart at some point during that process, and we didn't do that, and that's a fact. And it's kind of something that you play against a team like England or Wales or even Scotland, and you might get 70% possession, you might be 50-50, and you might be much more accurate and to get some line breaks. And going on last Saturday, that was disappointing, I thought, because I thought off the bat, I said, this is great, we're going after him, but we didn't. We went into ourselves as the game went on, and I thought that's what cost us. Like, that's why Teddy Thomas' try was so important. That's why we were down in our own 22 with 2.5 minutes on the clock and looking like a mountain to climb. Now, we got to the top of it, but geez, you won't do that every Saturday. Yeah.
Stephen, what are you seeing from Ireland in attack? Because we, as Eddie says, conditions notwithstanding, everyone accepts the conditions were tough, but 240 odd tackles from the French, and Ireland never really looked like scoring a try.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something that I would probably like to ask Eddie about is about Ireland after the first 3 or 4 phases. They're so good off the line out. We see the starter plays that they use in the years gone by. Joe Smith, he likes to always use off the top ball with lineouts, and he always has these trick plays up his sleeve. But when they don't seem to work, 3, 4, 5 phases, when they get into multi-phase, they seem to run out of ideas, and that's when they seem to go into those one-off runners. So is it something that Eddie sees as well in the Irish team, that when they do go past that 4 or 5 phases, that they don't, it's not that they run out of ideas, it's just maybe they don't have another plan in place?
Yeah, they get quite narrow and they go the attritional route. And there's nothing wrong with being attritional if you can win enough collisions over the period of the attrition. Now, the attrition in rugby, if you look at just not our game, but look at the way the game is going, it's not unusual now to go 15, 20, 25 phases in an attacking set. And the thing about that is, there's 2 ways to if you don't have a key to a door, there's 2 ways to open. You can kick it down or you can pick the lock. And we tend to spend a lot of time kicking it down. And we are very successful at that against certain teams. Like, we do wear teams down. But if you go back historically over the last couple of years, the teams we struggle to wear down the most are the teams that are able to match us physically. England can match us physically. I think Wales can match us physically now, and I think teams like New Zealand do as well. And you go back to how we beat New Zealand, last November, 12 months, is we tore them apart. We let the ball go. Yeah. And I just don't know why. Maybe it's the Six Nations, but I was going to say, maybe very attritional rugby.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it is the Six Nations. Like the margins are so fine, the room for error is so fine. It's a tournament all about momentum. Nobody wants to make a mistake. November, it does feel a bit more have a crack, shot to nothing territory.
Yeah,
in November.
November is definitely different. November is a different headset because you're having a crack, and it's not like the Six Nations is our bread and butter. But having said that, the best way to beat a team that you can't beat up physically is you've got to outsmart them. And like France are another team. The only thing France had on Saturday, was physicality, and they were up for the game and they were going to throw their bodies in the line. That was a given. So I thought we had the tools to pick them apart, and we didn't really go about it that much. I thought I'd like to see us do that a lot more, and we have the personnel for it. There's no question in my mind we have the guys to do it, but we didn't do it. We took them on head on, route one, full frontal assault regardless of casualties, and that's why we ended up where we ended up with 2.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, sorry, Stephen, go on.
I think too, Joe, that the game plan actually worked very, very well for Ireland for the majority of the match until that bit of lax defending where kind of Rob Kearney got caught a little bit narrow and Teddy Thomas went through for the try. France never looked like scoring either. Ireland's kicking was better. They were just getting the scoreboard ticking nicely, and I just thought they were going to close the game out and just keep playing like they had, and that try just changed everything. It really, really did. So for me, the tactics were, obviously a lot of people are disagreeing with the way Ireland played, but they had to go and do a job over in Paris, somewhere where they don't have a great record of winning. And to a certain extent that it's gone very, very well until that just a bit of horrendous defending, but thankfully we got out the right end of it.
Yeah, Eddie, you might come in on the horrendous defending. So Stephen's mentioned Kearney, and certainly at one point Conor Murray seemed to be the only one running up to close down the space, but I'm more interested actually in the Stockdale role. It was pretty noticeable that Fergus McFadden came on shortly after that. Flat on his feet was the line used by a few people about Stockdale, and there were a few worries over his defence across the festive schedule as well for Ulster. I wonder how severely that may count against Stockdale. Does that confirm worries we may have had over him?
Well, I think he got a lot of credit in the autumn, and he deserved it. He had a superb autumn, but I think whether it was, you get your first couple of caps and then you lose your focus a little bit. But he was poor over Christmas with Ulster defensively, and Ulster were struggling a bit, which wasn't all his fault. And I think on Saturday as well, if you looked at the way he was used an awful lot as a ball carrier in around the breakdowns at times, which for a winger is unusual. But he's a big man. He's like another back row on the field. So he had got through a heavy shift of work up to that point. And I think as well, Teddy Thomas is lightning quick, and he just got his fingertips away from him. But I would say it was a combination of the fact that he put in a big heavy shift of work. He carried the ball, I think, almost double digits, which is for a winger is pretty big. A lot of it was hard carrying as well. But he probably still should have made that tackle, and that's a little bit of a worry that he has missed some tackles in recent times. But just going back to what Stephen said there about Ireland, keeping the scoreboard ticking over, maybe just pulling away.
Yeah.
The other thing that worried me was that the source of Ireland's points were not, like, sometimes you get penalties because you build pressure and teams crack and they give away a penalty and you kick your points, and that's fine, that happens, and you build a score. But if you look at Ireland, the penalties Ireland got from France were just, like, the French penalties were asinine, to say the best. Like, they were just penalties. You wouldn't see them in a schools cup match in Donnybrook this week. Like Camara, gave away one to make it 6-0. It was just a stupid penalty. Vaimina, just before half time, takes out Conor Murray. It's stupid. Like, after the break, Lamara plays the ball in offside position. Like, there was 9 of our points came from brainless, plays, so complete idiotic plays by the French.
Yeah.
And even Garado gave one away in the 61st minute, line on a ruck, he wraps around the ball, and it's a definite penalty. No, Johnny missed it, but if the captain is doing that tells you their discipline is just a joke. 9 of the points we got, I guarantee you nobody else will give you those during the Six Nations, because they were childish. So looking at the source of our scores, had they been more disciplined and just trusted their defence more, I think there's 6 or 9 points there we might not have got. Yeah. Realistically, no, that tightens the conversation even more. They're all facts. You have to look at those things, because you guarantee you maybe Italy are prone to giving away penalties because they struggle with their defence, but Wales aren't going to give away stupid penalties. England won't give away stupid penalties. Either will Scotland probably. So you're going to have to work harder for your scores. And that's the thing that worries me. The source of our scores, if they weren't built on just pure pressure where the opposition cracked, it was because they were just stupid. Yeah.
Time's against me, so I'm not going to ask about the HIA independent doctor situation. I think it's been fairly well covered today in various places. Brian O'Driscoll was talking about it on the show this morning, Jalabert and then DuPont, and so there's a review underway about what the hell was going on there, because clearly it didn't seem like it was their heads, even though they were going off for HIAs. We may come back to that if it arises again. I do want to, though, squeeze in your thoughts on the other teams and how they shaped up. Gregor Townsend described the Scottish performance, Eddie, as a shock, which is a bit of an understatement. 34 points to 7. They never recovered from those 2 early tries. Wales were, I don't know, this is more the point. I don't know how good Wales were and how bad Scotland were, Eddie, and it's hard to decipher.
Well, I thought that shock was on its way to Gregor, because I think he's adapting to the international game. Like, what he did with Glasgow was excellent, but you can't just take a game plan that Glasgow has and just replant it into an international level, unless the players you have the skill set. So the time and space you get at Pro 14 is much different than international level. And it looked to me like Scotland were trying to write checks they couldn't cash. They were just playing like sevens rugby, and that's the way he wants to play. That's going to be his MO. But he's going to have to recalibrate. If they play the next 4 matches like that, they will pay a huge price. And they had no respect for field position. They were on from everywhere, and they weren't even that good at it. Now, on the other hand, I thought Wales were superb. Credit where credit is due.
Right.
I thought their skill set, like Wales were playing like Scotland were trying to play, except they were just so much better at it.
Right.
If you look at the passing from the Welsh forwards in their build-ups, it was absolutely magnificent. It was right on the money. And I remember talking to Warren Gatland 10 years ago when he took over, and he was absolutely amazed at the skill set of the Welsh players. And he was right. I mean, they have skill. All of them can play with the ball. Now, the Scots were trying to play like that. And it's one thing doing it at Pro 14, but you go up to an international arena and you get less time, less space, more pressure, and mistakes are ruthlessly punished. You know, the spaces are smaller as well. The time on the ball is less, and you get hit harder. And I think Scotland got a bit of a shock around what they were trying to do in Six Nations. So I think Gilbert Jones has to recalibrate what he's trying to do.
Right.
They can't play like this for the rest of the championship, and it worries me as Wales can. So that's a worry.
Okay, so well, Scotland have the French at the weekend, and Wales, Stephen, are in Twickenham. So Eddie's describing them there as superb. Would you go so far as to now say they've properly inserted themselves into that Ireland-England for the championship conversation?
I don't know. I think they also, have a number of injuries there, but I just don't see, like, Scotland for me were slightly embarrassed in the way they went about their business. I think they were just too casual. Everything that they tried to do, it didn't really faze them that they made mistakes. And they should have adopted what Ireland went to France and kept it tight and made it edgy. And that's what you got to do in those big games when you go away from home. Will Wales be able to do that in Twickenham? I think this English team are starting to get the ball rolling. They're starting to tick. Owen Farrell's playing some superb rugby. Simmons in the back row looks a quality player. So
will he stay? What happens to Simmons when Vunipola comes back?
Well, Simmons to me is just as good a player at the minute on form. Like he's so explosive, powerful. Just seems to be sitting boys down in tackles for fun, scoring tries, turnovers. He's all that you want in a back row. But we all know Billy Vunipola when he's fit. Is a hard man to stop. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Will Robshaw drop onto the bench and Simmons play 6 or 7? It's going to be an interesting subject. But will I see Wales beating England? No.
Okay. And then England-Italy, 15 points to 46. There were 7 tries for England, 2 for Watson, 2 for Simmons as well. Eddie, I don't know, did you see Ronan O'Gara was looking at the Farrell at 12, George Ford at 10 situation, and whoever he goes at, whoever Jones picks at 13, we might see Theo or Joseph. But O'Gara's not sure about Ford at all. Seeing a bit of club level, and actually thinks that by the time Ireland get to Twickenham, George Ford might not be the number 10. And then obviously they went out and played very well against Italy, but Italy aren't exactly world beaters either.
Yeah, I think one of the problems Eddie Jones has, he can't figure out his midfield, and he knows Ford is a very good out half. I would be inclined to agree that Roger's right that I think Farrell is a better 10 than George Ford, but they're 2 very good 10s. But Farrell is also a very good 12, and he's a great distributor as well. So I think what Eddie Jones is doing is getting his 2 best distributors on the field, which is not a bad idea. And I think if he had 2 centres locked in, he'd probably put Farrell to 10 and put his 2 centres. But who are his 2 centres? He doesn't have them, actually. It's the biggest conundrum for him going forward. And I think Ben Teo is not a 13. I think he's a decent 12. Okay. He's a big trucker. He's good in the offload. But defensively, I think he gets lost very easily. And I think I thought the English defence looked vulnerable on the weekend. Or whatever, Italy hadn't much chance, and they're not particularly good at it, but they still caused them problems. Yeah. I mean, that lead up to Italy's first try, I thought the English setup off the scrum was bizarre. They effectively defended 2 midfielders against 4 with a tag on at 9, and no wonder they had to backpedal and give up 40 metres before they could make a tackle. And then the damage was done. Italy weren't behind them, and Italy finished well. And the finishing of the try, I thought Johnny May was droning out there. I mean, he's a very good striker and he's great pace, but he's a poor defender. So they have defensive issues, and they have a conundrum in their midfield which they have yet to solve. And I think just going back to Simmons, I agree. Matt Williams said that he could see Simmons going to 7. I think he's so dynamic, he has to consider him in that role for sure. But England are not the finished product. But they certainly are very good at what they do. But I think that's the problem he has in the midfield. He doesn't have two centres, so he can move Farrell into the out half position. And the way he's set up at the moment, that's his best 10 and 12, and he's still struggling at 13.
Okay, well, we have Wales and England with bonus point wins, Ireland on 4 points, and well, it's all set up really nicely after the opening weekend. We're out of time, lads. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Stephen Ferris and Eddie O'Sullivan on the line. Our Six Nations coverage is with thanks to Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish Rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. 32 minutes gone at Vicarage Road. It's 0-0 between Watford and Chelsea. Kev will give us an update on that game in a second. Brian O'Driscoll was on OTB AM this morning, if you want to listen back to that, and we'll obviously have loads more rugby here across the week, not least on Wednesday Night Rugby.
Off the Ball on News Talk,
in association with the Air Sport app, allowing you to cast your favourite sporting action from your tablet or mobile phone straight to your TV.
The Hard Shoulder.
Ivan is Exira Delira jumping out of his skin today. Why? It is the first day of spring. There is hope that the long, dark winter is starting to be behind us. I look out and the glint of light is coming. Can the crocuses and daffodils be far behind?